Hello, you are listening to the Vive Salutable channel. He returned from the war a day earlier, and he dreamed of seeing her face when he opened the door. But it wasn't a surprise waiting for him in the house. It was betrayal. Alex Miller is a Marine, 6 months of service abroad, hundreds of kilometers from home. Every day he looked at his wife's picture and counted the days until he returned. He hasn't called or texted in the last 24 hours. He wanted to surprise me. I arrived at night. He quietly opened the door with the key she had left. But after 30 seconds he realized that he was not needed in this house. What he saw changed his life forever. The house was dark. Only the soft light from the kitchen filtered through the half-open door. Alex put his backpack at the entrance, took off his shoes. He didn't want to make any noise. His heart was pounding in his chest, anticipating the moment when she would run out to meet him. But she didn't run out. He took a step deeper into the house, and I immediately noticed the first strange thing. 2 glasses of wine on the table. Candles almost burnt out. One glass has lipstick marks on it. The second one has male fingerprints. Someone else's shirt is on the back of the chair. White, male, not his. Alex froze. He listened. The house was too quiet. And then I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. The house greeted Alex with an unusual silence, as if there was no time at all. He walked slowly down the corridor. The walls seemed to be whispering to him, "She's here, but something's wrong." The floorboards didn't creak underfoot. Perhaps Emma had left the hallway long ago. Only his raincoat and cap were hanging on a hanger in the hallway. There was a frame from their wedding on the dresser. He touched the glass, and the cold of a dried tear covered his chest. There were greasy streaks on the floor in the kitchen, and someone was in a hurry. On the table, in addition to glasses and candles, he came closer. In one photo, Emma is in a white dress. In the other, she is with Zachar Hunter, smiling as if they have known each other for a long time. Alex felt a chill descend to the small of his back. Where did these photos come from? He remembered that he sent Emma simple pictures, selfies in uniforms, photos of dawn over the base. These are different. The light from the kitchen cast long shadows on the walls. Alex strained his eyes and caught movement in the living room doorway. His heart was about to jump out. He stepped inside, clutching the handle of a package opener in his hand. But his hands were shaking so much that they pricked his fingers with glass. Emma was sitting there on the couch. Her back was straight, her hair was loose, but her gaze was not joyful. She raised her head cautiously, her eyes narrowing slightly. On her lips is the lipstick from the glass, and there's a phone in her hand. She was flipping through something. Alex understood. It's not just a date, it's a trap. At that moment, his world split in two. He was standing in front of the door, a knife in his hands, and in front of him was the woman for whom he had traveled thousands of miles. And now the question sounded louder than all the explosions at the front. Who is the enemy here? Alex stepped into that living room and found himself in semi-darkness, where the soft light from the kitchen drew long shadows on the walls. Emma was sitting at the center of the room, her face turned to the side, her hair falling freely over her shoulders, and a phone screen glittering in her hands. He felt his heart tighten. All the expectations and hopes that he had been carrying for half a year were shattered in an instant. I remember memories of the front, explosions, the heat of bullets, comrades standing waist-deep in mud. But this confrontation turned out to be more difficult than any fight. He was face to face with a woman for whom he had traveled thousands of miles and suddenly realized that he did not know her until the end. On the table behind her were 2 glasses with a barely noticeable coating of wine and the marks of someone else's lipstick. Her keys rested on the back of the chair next to a lighter that didn't look like his own. Alex slowly approached the table. Each step was a buzzing in his ears. The look of the photos, Emma with another man, the happy shots, left no doubt. This was not just an invitation to a romantic evening, but a carefully thought-out trap. He remembered how he had trusted her wholeheartedly, how every day he counted the hours until their reunion, and now he realized that the very house he had aspired to just 1 day earlier had become an arena of secrets that he had not foreseen. Picking up the phone, Emma showed him a letter, succinct and cold. The text stated that he had been secretly corresponding with someone else, that his affections had long been away from home but far beyond their marriage. Alex felt his mouth go dry. Not a single word required explanation. His own lines from the other side of the world had turned against him. Every sentence was pounding into his temples, and he realized that he was mistaken, thinking that he would return home and everything would return to its place. In this semi-darkness, their gazes met for a split second, and he saw in her eyes not only disappointment, but also the pain that he himself had caused her. The world around him began to crumble, as if he was standing inside a floating fragment. And now he had to decide who was to blame and who was the victim of circumstances. Alex heard his own heartbeat, drowning out the pounding of memories and the voice of reason. He looked down at the glasses, at the photo of their wedding lying on the shelf, and realized that this moment would be the point of no return. The house that held their love turned into a museum of betrayal, and what he read in that message buried all illusions once and for all. When the phone went off and the room was plunged into semi-darkness again, Alex knew that there were no easy answers ahead. Standing in front of him was not a rival on the battlefield, but the woman he had once sworn to protect. And this internal battle promised to be the fiercest. Alex shrugged off the sudden outburst of resentment. The words in the letter were like cold bullets, but he decided not to respond with them. He took a deep breath and took a step towards Emma. She clasped her hands together as if trying to keep herself from sobbing. There was a mixture of remorse and fear in her eyes. He sat down across from her, leaving a couple of feet of space between them. He spoke evenly, but his voice was shaking. Alex asked what kind of correspondence it was and why she believed these words more than him, her husband, who had gone through the hell of war for her. Emma looked down and admitted that it all started with suspicions. He became distant in the last weeks before leaving. Late calls, sudden mood swings. She told how Sergeant Hunter, who meekly supported her during the desperation of waiting, gave her photographs and copies of letters allegedly sent from his military mail. He was happy to convince her that Alex was having an affair in a foreign land. Emma believed Hunter because he was showing proof of the seriousness of the situation. Screenshots, even printouts of several pages of correspondence. Alex listened without interrupting, but inside he was seething with indignation. He had never written to anyone but her. How could the mail have been tampered with? Why didn't he know about her doubts? Questions arose like wild wolves without mercy. Emma paused, tears welling up on her cheeks. She confessed in a whisper that she didn't fully believe it herself, but the fear of losing him outweighed the desire to trust him. And as the evidence became more and more convincing, she couldn't find the strength to verify its veracity. Alex jumped up abruptly. He felt his anger turn into determination. He went to the table, picked up the scattered photographs and one glass, in which the trace of the evening wine still shimmered. "I need an answer," he said softly. "Where are the original letters? Who forged them? Why was Hunter in the middle of this?" Emma looked up and for the first time looked at him without fear, hoping to see understanding in his gaze. She handed him the phone. On the screen was a photo of the front page of the military post, what he had seen before, now open in the image editing application. Timestamps, fonts, and styles are all fake. "I've been trying to figure it out for myself," she said, "but I couldn't do it without you." At that moment, Alex felt the tightening lump of resentment in his chest slowly dissipate. Hunter's meanness was coming true. He sat down next to her, bent over the screen, and said, "This is just the beginning." They both understood that in order to restore the truth, they would have to join forces. Alex will call Rick tomorrow, the detective friend. But now they were alone in the semi-darkness of the living room where everyone was waiting with bated breath for what would happen next. The house was plunged into silence, broken only by the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the feeling that the real battle was just coming. Alex and Emma spent the night awake, exchanging anxious glances and going over every detail of what had happened in their minds. At the first light of dawn, Alex got dressed and went out into the courtyard, where he invited Emma to join him for a short walk under the cool morning sky. He was holding a phone with photos of fakes in his hand, She was holding a cup of hot coffee, trying to put her thoughts together. They decided to act quickly and carefully. Firstly, to give Emma time to realize more deeply that Hunter manipulated her and distorted the truth. And secondly, to find facts that will not leave the slightest doubt about his criminal intentions. Alex sent a short message to his friend Rick, an ex-military and private investigator. "We need a meeting today. There are fakes associated with Hunter. You need to check the database servers and printouts of emails." 2 hours later, Rick appeared in their house. Short, with disheveled hair and eyes accustomed to seeing lies from afar, he spread out a folder with legal documents and a laptop in front of Emma and Alex. "First of all," Rick explained, "to prove the substitution of emails, you need to get the original logs of the mail server and compare the metadata. If Hunter tried to forge emails, he left digital traces, copies on his devices that were forwarded to a personal address. The plan was born almost instantly. Alex would volunteer to enter the base under the guise of transmitting urgent reports from the command, save the logs of mail transactions for the last 3 months to a flash drive, and Emma and Rick would go to the office of a local communications provider to get copies of screenshots and files that Hunter could use for falsifications." When they said goodbye to Rick, Emma felt a surge of inner strength for the first time in a long time. She hugged Alex tightly and whispered, "Thank you for believing me." Alex replied with a nod, his eyes showing a determination to restore not only justice, but also trust between them. That evening, Alex entered the base disguised as a courier of an official document. In the corridors, familiar from his 6 months of service, he moved quickly and confidently. Entering the server room, he inserted a USB flash drive and began copying logs. Faint indicators flashed on the screen, recording each operation. The guard's footsteps flashed over his shoulder. Alex held his breath, but before he stopped at the door, he managed to disappear into the shadows of the equipment. Meanwhile, Emma and Rick, in the very center of the city, received a bundle of printouts from the provider. Emails, screenshots of WhatsApp conversations, image files. Everything was neatly wrapped and numbered. Emma had looked at it as if it were evidence in a detective novel, but now it was all very real. She understood that behind every element of this case are the actions of a specific person, and soon the truth will come true. The next day, the three of them met at a small cafe on the outskirts. Rick spread out printouts and a laptop with logs on the table. Emma held glasses of coffee in her hands, trying hard to contain her excitement. Alex handed her a flash drive with logs and turned on the laptop. Entries appeared on the screen, timestamps, IP addresses, and device IDs. Rick quickly compared the data. Almost all the emails that allegedly came from Alex were registered not from a military mail server, but from Hunter's personal laptop at home. When the last file was uploaded, the proof flashed on the screen. The email from Alex was sent from Hunter's home IP address and contained a template file with much more metadata than combat mail could have. The name of the Hunter JM user was in the signature. Emma closed her eyes, then opened them and looked at Alex, and there was no more doubt in her gaze. They both realized that they now had indisputable evidence in their hands. Returning home, they were silent, each immersed in their own thoughts about what would happen next. But the night before the decisive step gave them an epiphany. The story of betrayal, to which they became victims, has now turned into a story of the victory of truth. And the moment will come when Hunter will face the law and all those to whom he tried to lie. There was silence in their house again, but this time it was no longer frightening. She promised justice, which was about to come, and allowed them both to feel for the first time in a long time that love, tested by the most difficult ordeal, was still alive. The next morning, Alex and Emma woke up with the feeling that everything was being decided here and now. They laid out the evidence on the dining room table, printouts, a USB flash drive with logs, photographs. Emma dialed the number of the lawyer with whom Rick had agreed the fee in advance, a lawyer well known in the military for his honesty and experience in dealing with complex cases. While Emma was talking to the lawyer, Alex went to the garage to get his uniform. He put on berets and camouflage trousers, over which he threw a field jacket. The familiar smell of the fabric instantly brought him back to the everyday life of the service. But now the clothes were not a means of protection, but a symbol of the truth that he was ready to defend. At noon, they drove to the police station of military personnel. Emma was carrying a folder with documentation. Alex was carrying a laptop and a USB flash drive. Rick was already waiting in the reception area, and he took out a copy of the official request for access to the military logs. Soon, the captain of justice was sitting at their table, who listened attentively to their story and looked at the evidence. "Your evidence is convincing," he said. "We will conduct an independent examination of the authenticity of the letters and photographs. The agents will analyze the logs and compare them with the basic archives. If everything is confirmed, Sergeant Hunter will be charged with forgery and fraud using military mail." Leaving the police station, Alex felt as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Emma put her hand on his shoulder, and the tension that had held the house in ice captivity for the past few days disappeared from their gazes. When they returned home, they decided to capture their story. Emma offered to make a short video where they would talk together about how they were able to resist lies and regain trust. Alex was skeptical about the idea at first. He didn't want publicity. "But then I realized that it was important to talk about this so that other soldiers and their families would know how to act if they encountered something like this." In the evening, they turned on the camera. Together, shoulder to shoulder, they talked through every step. From the initial shock in the living room to collecting evidence, from Rick's help to contacting the police. Their voices sounded calm, without accusations or dramatization, just facts and conclusions. Emma talked about the pain of betrayal and how important it is to trust but to check. Alex talked about honor and clarity of procedure, without which the truth can go unnoticed. The next day, the video was uploaded to the channel, and links were sent to thematic groups of veterans and military families. Discussions instantly broke out in the comments. Someone thanked for their honesty, someone shared their own stories, and lawyers and detectives offered their contacts and advice. And so, a week later, an official notification came from the military court. According to the results of the examination, the evidence was recognized as authentic. Sergeant Hunter was detained and brought to justice. Alex and Emma have been invited to attend the hearing, where they will testify. That day, as they walked along the courthouse corridor, the sun reflected off the tall windows, and every step echoed faintly. Emma squeezed Alex's hand, and in her gaze there was not only relief, but also pride. They had gone through betrayal, tricked the deceiver, and brought him to light. And there was a new chapter ahead, a chapter of trust, strengthened by trials and the truth. Months have passed since Alex and Emma crossed the threshold of the military court. Sergeant Hunter received a well-deserved punishment for deception and abuse of trust. He was sentenced to probation and dismissed on negative grounds. The Miller family's life was gradually returning to normal. Alex is back in the ranks, this time coaching new recruits, passing on to them not only military skills, but also lessons of honor and trust. Emma returned to work as a social psychologist, helping military families cope with the gap between expectations and the reality of service. Every morning they drink coffee together on the veranda of their house in San Diego, where a photo of their wedding now hangs on the wall, the one that has survived the test of time and the trials of betrayal. Sometimes Emma picks up the letter in which Alex talked about the sunrises over the Japanese base and smiles. These words became the basis of their new story. Sometimes they remember that night when the house was plunged into semi-darkness and realized that without this battle for the truth, they would never have known how strong their love is and how important it is to stand up for each other. The story of betrayal has turned into a story of rebuilding trust. And now, with only peaceful days ahead, Alex and Emma know that no lie can defeat those who fight for the truth together.